I also rise to address the motion moved by the Leader of the House to amend the COVID-19 vaccination requirements and to extend the current requirements until the 12th of May 2022. Deputy Speaker, I support vaccines. I am fully vaccinated, but I oppose these vaccine mandates. I made my decision, Deputy Speaker, to be fully vaccinated freely and without coercion. I did so having spoken to my doctor and my family. It was my choice. I've also encouraged members of my community to be vaccinated in consultation with their own doctors. There's been an overwhelming response in my community. We have hit our vaccination targets. We have reached the numbers that the National Plan advised in order for us to open up our state and our nation. So why, Deputy Speaker, has the Victorian government chosen to use a stick when the overwhelming majority of our community are getting vaccinated? Why does this government seek to divide us further at a time when, in my very strong view, at a time when our community needs hope, needs optimism and certainty now more than ever? Deputy Speaker, to illustrate this point further, I refer to an Australian Associated Press article published today, the 9th of February. Yesterday, the 9th of February. It reports that the Prime Minister and the Victorian Premier are at odds this morning over vaccine requirements for international tourists when Australian borders reopen. The federal government plans to open the nation's borders to overseas tourists from February the 21st for the first time in 2 years. The article then goes on, but Mr Andrews on Tuesday flagged international visitors coming to Victoria could have to fall into line with rules applying to states' residents. These rules require people going to hospitality venues and major events to have had their 2 doses plus a booster shot. Quote, it'll apply here in the state of Victoria, the Premier told reporters when asked if the same rules would apply. But then on the 8th of February, 7 News reported, Deputy Speaker, that Victorians may soon need a 3rd dose to be considered fully vaccinated against COVID-19, but the state's Chief Health Officer says he hasn't been asked for his advice on the issue. Professor Sutton, addressing a parliamentary inquiry, said he had not provided official advice to the government on the plan to mandate a 3rd vaccine. He's quoted as saying, "I haven't been requested to provide advice on broader vaccine mandates at this stage," he said. And then, Deputy Speaker, just earlier today, on the doors here in the Parliament, Labor's Tourism Minister Pakula said, quote, "It's too early to make any kind of definitive statements in advance of ATAGI advice." So you've got the Premier saying that it's a requirement, you've got the Chief Health Officer saying that he hasn't been asked for advice, and you've got another senior Labor minister saying that it's too early to make definitive requirements, definitive statements in advance of ATAGI advice. So what is it, Deputy Speaker? What's the answer here? Why is there so much confusion around this from the government if what they are doing is solely basing their decision-making on health advice? In my view, Deputy Speaker, politics does come into play here. Let's speak frankly. Let's speak absolutely frankly. There is only one member in this place that is directly affected by the extension of this motion, and that is my good friend and colleague, the member for Forest Hill, Mr Angus. Why is this motion being moved in this chamber when an identical motion is not being moved in the council, as it was when it's 10 metres away, thank you, Member for Brighton, that is what happened at the end of last year when this motion was first considered. Now, the member for Forest Hill is a very good member for Forest Hill. He's a very decent man. He takes his role as a Member of Parliament very, very seriously. He's undertaken significant work in parliamentary committees as a member of the Shadow Cabinet, as a member of the Outer Shadow Ministry, and as a local Member of Parliament. His heart and his soul is in the job of being a local representative, and The effect of this motion, Deputy Speaker, means that Mr Angus is no longer able to fully participate and fully able to represent his community. Now, other speakers have raised the fact that members of parliament to attend their electorate offices are required to be fully vaccinated, but constituents attending an electorate office are not. Why the inconsistency, Deputy Speaker? Why the inconsistency in this case? Look, it's my strong view, Deputy Speaker, that freedom of choice and the right to make informed decisions about your own health are key pillars of our democracy. Freedom of choice matters and must always be accompanied by individual responsibility, accepting the benefits and consequences of the decision made. These concerns that I'm expressing are not mine alone. I speak for my community, employers, small businesses, leaders, mothers, fathers and many more who have written to me who are vaccinated but fear living in a state where our community is further divided into a two-class system. I recall, Deputy Speaker, speaking to a local Hyatt resident who works at Mentone Woolworths. She has chosen not to be vaccinated. I respect her choice. She's not able to work at Mentone Woolworths at the moment because of her vaccination status, but she drew to my attention the fact that she can go there and shop for 8 hours of the day with no consequence. She's allowed to do that. She's allowed to see her now former colleagues. She's allowed to spend time with them as a shopper, not as a colleague. There are inconsistencies with this. No other state in this nation has these mandates in the same way that Victoria has rolled them out. It's wrong. It's got to end. We've got to move on. We've got to rebuild. We've got to recover. We've got to get back to a Victoria that we once were. And the one thing in the way of that at the moment, Deputy Speaker, in my view, is decisions being made, inconsistent decisions being made by this government. Further, the government's COVID-19 vaccination mandate motion, in my view, undermines the opportunity for democratically elected members of parliament to attend parliament and the parliamentary precinct. This should be of deep concern to every Victorians. MPs are democratically elected and represent those who have elected them in this state's parliament. By having the ability to restrict participation in the parliament, this motion places a barrier between the needs of a community and an MP advocating for those needs in the parliament. This motion hasn't considered the possibility of rapid COVID testing, as earlier speakers have addressed, rapid COVID testing as a way for every MP to fully participate in the parliament. And that is indeed a great shame. This motion has not considered the opportunity for electronic participation in the parliament as a way to bridging the divide between, once again, the member for Forest Hill participating more fully in parliamentary proceedings representing his constituents or not. And that is indeed a great shame. Political representation is essential, Deputy Speaker, to a liberal democracy, and without it, democracy is significantly undermined. Again, and finally, I support vaccines. I am fully vaccinated, but I oppose this motion together with my coalition colleagues. Freedom of choice matters, and that must always be defended.